that we've been experiencing on a weekly, if not daily basis, is only compounded by the complexities of the circumstances that we face. That's something that I've been grappling with every day, and I know people in our city have as well. Now, in grappling with it and having some of these hard discussions that we need to have, one of the first steps that is necessary is transparency, good, bad, or ugly. And in achieving transparency, it's essential, and it was essential in this case, that we release the body-worn camera footage. I do want to make sure that you understand the considerations that are in place when we release body-worn camera footage and making sure that we're transparent every step of the way. First, prior to releasing the footage, we want to make sure that the family that is grieving has an opportunity to see it first. That is a non-negotiable for me. Second, about a year ago, we instituted a policy in place that prohibited officers involved in a critical incident from reviewing body-worn camera footage prior to giving a statement. Now, that policy in some instances is in fact trumped by the state law. The state law says that body-worn camera footage is private or non-public unless one of several exceptions are met. Those exceptions are somewhat arbitrary and in general are to be determined by local elected officials. The state law should be changed so that there is more clarity, there is more transparency, and people throughout our city know what to expect with regards to its release. Anyone who watches these videos, no matter the circumstances, at the very least experiences a deep and unsettled feeling. It's gut-wrenching. No matter the circumstances, a man, Amir Locke, has lost his life. A family is grieving and has forever been changed. Regardless of the circumstances, we must hold those facts in our heart. This video raises about as many questions as it does answers, and those answers we need to be providing as quickly as possible through a number of investigations that are in fact already underway, whether through the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension or the St. Paul or Minneapolis police departments. We intend to get answers as quickly as possible and in transparent fashion, recognizing that as of tonight, not all of those answers can be provided. These issues are complex. And I know there are so many here that are grieving and don't care as much about the complexity because, let's face it, a man has lost his life. But it is our job, it is my job as a leader to figure it out. I do not want to put the public or our officers in harm's way. These two principles, they are not mutually exclusive. They are up to us to work together to get the necessary resources, to provide the necessary information, and to have a willingness to both ask uncomfortable questions and then receive uncomfortable answers. Truth and justice must be our guiding principles, and make no mistake that they will be. So for tonight, I know that so many people are grieving and gathering with their friends and their family. They want to process, they want to reflect the tragic events from the last few days, and they're still also feeling the grip of what our city has experienced in the form of so many crises over the last several years. Take care of each other. And from tonight, as we look ahead, we are committed to this work, to each other, and to swift transparency. And I'll pass it to our interim chief, Amelia Huffman.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Let me first acknowledge, like Mayor Fry, the loss and pain in our community. These events unfold in seconds, but the trauma is long-lasting. A young man lost his life, and his friends and family are in mourning. Community members are in pain and have questions, and rightfully so. And the course of the lives of our officers has been changed forever. It's a sobering moment. Community trust is a public safety requirement. In Minneapolis, our community safety work is only as good as the public trust that we have built, and we have plenty of work ahead of us. Events like this tonight, as well as community conversations that I've had yesterday and today, are part of that work. The decision that we made to release this footage is not necessarily common among local governments, but I believe it is the right decision. My initial priority, like Mayor Fry's, was for the parents of this young man to be able to see this video before it was released to the public. And they had the opportunity to do so this afternoon. I'm grateful to all of the folks in the city whose work made it possible for us to release this video to you tonight, and to Mayor Fry for his partnership and his shared commitment to building public trust and rebuilding community safety. I'm under no illusion that processing this video will be easy. It won't be. It shouldn't be. These are wrenching videos to watch. They're painful. But it's necessary. And I hope that it provides some answers along with the questions. And so here is a brief recap of the events that led up to the video and the events that you saw in the video. So as many of you know, this involves an underlying homicide investigation that was undertaken by the St. Paul Police Department. Their investigation led them to identify several suspects and 3 locations in the city of Minneapolis. And they asked the Minneapolis Police Department SWAT team to execute the search warrant at 3 apartments in the building on Marquette. Both a no-knock and a knock search warrant were obtained for those locations so that the SWAT team could assess the circumstances and make the best possible decision about entry. As you saw in the video, the team approached the door and they used a key. There was no need to force entry. There was no breaching. There was no ram involved. They used a key to open the door and announced police search warrant before they crossed the threshold. The team was announcing police search warrant as they proceeded into the apartment. Their job was to make entry deliberately to assess any threats that were inside. As they proceeded toward the back of the apartment, as you saw in the video, there was a couch. And you can see that there's a form under a blanket or a comforter that begins to rise up. The officers were approaching. They were giving commands to show your hands, show your hands. And as they got close, you can see, along with an individual emerging from under the blanket, the barrel of a gun, which comes out from the blanket and becomes more fully exposed as you move frame by frame through the video. And then the still shot shows the image of the firearm in the subject's hands at the best possible moment when the lighting was fully on him. That's the moment when the officer had to make a split-second decision to assess the circumstances and determine whether he felt like there was an articulable threat, that the threat was of imminent harm, great bodily harm or death, and that he needed to take action right then to protect himself and his partners. Ultimately, that decision of whether that threshold was met will be examined by the county attorney's office that reviews this case. The homicide investigation in St. Paul is ongoing. Mr. Locke was not named in the original search warrant, and so at this point it is unclear if or how he is connected to St. Paul's investigation, but they are continuing to work dedicatedly on that case. They were on scene. They did search and recover items that they believe are of evidentiary value in their homicide investigation, and that work continues. The investigation by the BCA is ongoing. The Minneapolis Police Department will also make an assessment of policy and procedure violations in a separate internal administrative investigation. There are multiple jurisdictions and multiple investigations bound up in this discussion, and that makes information sharing extremely complicated. I want to be direct with you. Due to the multi-jurisdictional considerations, I am limited in what I can say. I'm going to take questions, as will the mayor, and we will do our best.
Chief, this was a cacophony. This young man, presumably sleeping, had very little time to react. He was probably stunned. I mean, are you going to look at your policies and possibly call this justifiable in the wake of everyone seeing this footage?
So we will definitely look at all of the events in this case that led up to this incident. We will be re-examining our policies, of course. Our agency is committed to meeting best practices, and tactical operations among agencies vary wildly. There is no single best practice for making these kind of entries. And even among agencies in the Twin Cities, agencies may use different tactics on different search warrants, and different agencies have different policies. So certainly I think that will be a valuable conversation.
Was Mr. Locke a suspect in any crime at all?
I cannot speak for the investigation in St. Paul because I don't have the facts of that case. But St. Paul is working to understand the evidence that they collected and the underlying facts of their homicide investigation. And I have been assured by Chief Axtell that they will make information public as soon as they have it available.
Chief, how do you define threshold? Because we can clearly see in the video that no words were spoken by those officers before they entered the door. Yesterday you said that they were loudly announcing their presence and knocking at the door before, but that didn't happen. We saw it all in the video.
Right. So in the video, they open the door with the key and announce police search warrant before they enter the apartment.
That's not true. If you go back and watch the video, they do not say until they cross the threshold of the door. It's just not true.
I definitely encourage everyone to view the video and make that assessment for themselves.
Is it true that officers are only to speak one at a time when they come in? In other words, is that police training 101 that only one officer speaks? In these circumstances, why were all of them screaming and shouting at once in ways that you could not determine what they were actually even saying?
So certainly when we're doing a more controlled action, like a felony stop, we clearly identify one person to be speaking. In this case, the officers were advancing into the apartment and also into separate rooms. And so you do have people giving commands, loud commands, and repeating police search warrant, police search warrant.
Chief, yesterday in your statement, you specifically articulated that he pointed the gun in the direction of the officers. You did not use that language just now. Can you point to specifically in the video where he points the gun at the officers?
Yeah, so if you look at that still image, even though you don't see all of the officers, the involved officer was just outside the frame in the direction that that barrel is emerging from the blanket.
But it looked to me as if that gun in Mr. Locke's hand was pointed toward the floor.
And certainly when the county attorney's office reviews that case, they will be carefully examining all of those factors. And I'm absolutely positive they will take a look at that. Of course, we all know these events happen very rapidly. And as there's a gun emerging in your direction, you're forced to make a split-second decision about when it's a threat.
Chief Huffman, no, hold on. Chief Huffman, no, do not. Okay, I'm not a threat. I don't have a gun. Okay? Don't treat me like I'm a threat. This is what I would call the anatomy of a cover-up. This is unacceptable. I'm sorry, it is. When I agreed to work with you on the work group, we talked about the importance of transparency and accountability. And here, what we are seeing is business as usual. And you know this, Amelia. You know this, Jacob. I don't know how you guys slept that night. I couldn't sleep at night. Tears from a mother's perspective, thinking about what happened. I saw the picture of Amir. He looks like a boy. My son is 17 years old. He has slept on his friends' couches for sleepovers. So we cannot sit here and whitewash this and pretend that it's okay. You knew that I was not going to stand for police violence and a push for accountability, yet you asked me to be a part of the work group, and I knew what I thought I was signed up for. This isn't what I signed up for. I understand if you're not comfortable having me continue to co-chair, that's your prerogative. I signed up to help bring recommendations because we're tired of being killed. We're tired of the cover-ups. We're tired of the excuses. And to hide behind the St. Paul Police Department, the deadliest police force in the state of Minnesota, is unacceptable. You all had no business agreeing to carry out a warrant, and now you're claiming that's part of their investigation. You don't know. Well, why the hell did you all sign up to do this in the first place? There was a homicide that happened at 1-something in the morning on Hennepin Avenue. Someone was killed, and then the person drove away in a black SUV. They're still at large in Minneapolis, potentially a threat to residents, But you all go do something for St. Paul Police, and now you're trying to hide behind that decision. It's not acceptable. We are ready for change. When the people voted to re-elect you, Jacob, they not only showed that they wanted to see a new leader, right? Not saying you're not the person who got reelected, you got reelected. But what they were expecting is a new beginning. That's why they gave you more power and authority. So that is what we want to see as the residents of Minneapolis. We don't want to see cover-ups. We don't want to see whitewashing. People are asking very simple questions that have still not been answered. Amelia, you're saying you want to be the chief? Then act like it. Demonstrate integrity. Don't cover up for what those cops did. If they knew that the kid had a gun as he started waking up, say, drop your weapon. They didn't do that. One cop opened fire and took the life of a child who was trying to go back into his blanket. Any mom can see what happened there. So I can't tolerate the whitewashing. I'm sorry, y'all. We can't do this. I know you have your narrative. I know you have your script. And no, you guys didn't personally go shoot somebody. But you do have the opportunity to make it right, to talk about the fact that you changed the no-knock warrant policy. Where's the evidence of that? That wasn't present on what happened to Amir Locke. So if I'm going to be the co-chair of this group, I'm expecting strong leadership, I'm expecting integrity, and I'm expecting accountability. Yes. You guys aren't going to waste my goddamn time. And I don't care, you guys had your security trying to stop me. I can be used to come speak the truth about what needs to happen, but when it's time to call out these inconsistencies, these inaccuracies, the lack of information, I got to sit in the back or even not even be invited. I'm not here for it. We fought too long, too hard. There's people in jail, including Cortez Rice, trying to get the court to show what's happening in the courtroom so people can see what's going on. People have put their lives on the line because we're ready for change. So we're expecting from this point forward for you guys to do something different. I'm not playing. We're not here for it. We're not here for it. I'm only committed to working on this work group if you all are committed to being honest and transparent and not covering up the bullshit. Thank you.
Why did you release pictures of his gun, but no pictures of the gun of the officer who killed him? Why have you not released that information? You know, this man did not shoot anyone. He did not discharge his weapon. Why did you release his gun? That was a disgusting vilification of this man. That is inexcusable. It is utterly disgusting that you would release a picture of his gun, even though he never fired his weapon. And you know he didn't fire his weapon because you had both seen the video. This is the kind of lack of transparency that Nakeema is exactly talking about when you send out these sensationalistic pictures of his gun, a man who has never committed a crime, but you don't release the video, or rather the pictures of the officer's gun.
So, Ms. Gross, thank you for being here. And Ms. Levy-Armstrong, thank you for your strong words. You acknowledged and rightfully pointed out that at this moment in time, we need accountability, we need leadership, and we need transparency. You asked whether we wanted you to continue as co-chair. The answer is yes. We are dead serious about seeing the necessary changes through, and the necessary changes start with being honest and transparent. That begins with all of you here today and releasing body camera footage in the immediacy so that people can see exactly what is in it, good, bad, or ugly. But it doesn't stop there. It goes on to getting the necessary facts of the case, and I know, speaking from experience, that there is an ongoing tension between getting things out quickly and getting things right. We want to get things right. We want to, excuse me, we want to gather the necessary evidence to make sure that we are not telling you something that is inaccurate now, only to correct it a day later.
Why was Amir Locke referred to as a suspect?
And so I'm going to ask...
Why was Amir Locke referred to as a suspect in the MPD's press release?
That's right.
I don't know. So can you speak
And
to that?
again, why was his gun pictures released?
So if we could do one question at a time. We do want to answer the questions, but I would also prefer just to one question at a time. To your question, I do not know.
Does the chief know? Can the chief answer that question?
Go ahead.
So yesterday, at the time that we were putting out the press release, we didn't have as much information as we have now, of course. And so it's unclear, certainly unclear yesterday, but it remains unclear if or how Mr. Locke is connected to St. Paul's investigation. And more information will be coming as St. Paul digs further into the case.
Why did you refer to him as a suspect in a press release
If you didn't know.
if you
That's
didn't
all the
know?
time we have, everyone. Let's call it.
No.
Was anyone apprehended as part of this,
Also,
When will you release the search warrant?
how is walking out of a press conference transparency? You are a murderer!
You owe us answers.
This is a shame. This is what we have been fighting against. This is what we've been fighting against since George Floyd was killed. Running away from accountability and transparency. This is shame. Residents or people in Minneapolis need to know this cannot continue. They killed a young man who was sleeping. He did not even have a chance. And for a lot of the media already shared the one where he had the gun holding it. You know, if you are anybody who's a gun owner, that if your finger is out, you are preparing, but you are not ready to fire because you don't even know who's in front of you. This young man did not have a chance. This was Breonna Taylor in Minneapolis, and even worse. And the mayor and the chief are running away from questions.
I have to say it. I have to say it. Sorry. I have to say it. Sorry, I'm getting up here as fast as I can. You saw what happened just now when I asked about why they released those pictures of his gun, though they never made an allegation that he fired it. And you can clearly see in the video that it was never fired. In fact, he never even pointed it at an officer. But yet, they will not answer the question of why they released that sensationalistic, demonizing picture, but yet they did not release anything about the officer except his name until finally now. And they certainly did not release a picture of his gun. Wouldn't that be more relevant to news media? That was the gun that was fired. Why would they release a picture of this man's gun? What was the sole purpose of that? Well, we know what it was. It was sensationalistic demonization of a victim of police murder. Plain and simple. And I'm disgusted by it. I'm disgusted by the fact that these elected officials and appointed officials cannot actually answer a simple question. They said, we'll do one question at a time. I think I asked my question 3 times. Why did you release the pictures of that gun? What was the purpose of releasing those pictures? And yet they ran away. Time's up. Ran away without ever answering that question. There was not one legitimate reason for releasing that picture. It was about associating a man with a gun to try to create a narrative to justify what the police did. That is what happened here tonight. That's what happened when they released that yesterday. It is reprehensible. It is disgusting. We are not tolerating it as a community any longer, and that's why we had to be here tonight. Thank you. By the way, I think that he was brave as hell, frankly. The bravest person I know, honestly.
I couldn't tolerate that. That could have been my son, that was somebody's son, I can't. And then to hear them put a fake narrative on the video we saw, no. Enough is enough.
Didn't answer my question about how all these damn people are shouting at the same time. It was a completely controlled situation. The police controlled it. They controlled it.
And one officer literally jumped the gun, and now they're covering for him. No. And thank you to those who actually asked critical questions and didn't just accept their BS. Because it's not acceptable.
No, it's not acceptable. Thank you for your bravery. These guys need to be confronted. They can't be allowed to just spin these freaking narratives.
No, it has to stop. No, I'm okay. Thank you.